Good evening. Good evening. What's up? What's up, Marie?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Kathy, Grant, and Mr. Wright. How are you guys doing tonight?
Great.
All right. Thank you, Marie.
Well, wonderful. We're going to have a great show tonight. And I'm looking forward to the topic that we're going to discuss tonight. And as I'm going to present my co-host, Mr. Julius Campbell, but I call him Miko. So go ahead, Miko.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I am excited about our conversation tonight. I am grateful for each of you that you come to join us on Incarceration to Incorporation. What do we do here? We change the narrative. What does that mean? So often, returning citizens are coming home, and many people, community, corrections, they say that we are automatically going right back in, but that is not the case. We are here to change that narrative. We are here to give you a safe space to share your successes, to share your stories, whether you are successful in relationships, occupation, organization, whatever, even if it's marriage. There are multiple men and women who are doing well. And as I always love to say, we may have started out wrong, but we are finishing strong. And so tonight, we are going to talk about a specific bill, something that is out there that is causing a lot of chaos and panic. And so we thought that we need to bring some people on to share what this is happening, what's taking place in the schools and things like that. So without further ado, we're going to go right on in and allow them to introduce themselves. But before they do, I want to say this. What does this have to do with returning citizens? Well, I love quotes, and a famous American poet once said, "He who refuses to learn from history is forced to repeat its mistakes." Many of us, especially returning citizens, we have not learned from the history of those that have made mistakes before us. And so we have made mistakes. Well, our children, what they are learning in school helps them to prepare to make wise decisions. And so therefore, we thought that we want to bring some educators on to allow us to know what our children are learning, number one. Also, we've been talking about the school to prison pipeline. So we want to give you a little more clarity on what that is as well. So I'm going to allow them to go ahead and start. We're going to start with Kathy first, and then we'll ask you, tell us who you are and what you do.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Buenas noches, everyone. I am really excited to be here today. I am a youth worker, an educator, an organizer, and I currently serve as one of the directors of youth programming at the Deep Center based in Savannah, Georgia.
Great. Mr. Tolan, share us.
How are you guys doing? My name is Mr. Tolan Wright. I am a 7th and 8th grade mathematics teacher. I am presently serving in Savannah Chatham County Public School System at Building Bridges Academy Middle School. That is an alternative school program. A lot of our students have had encounters with juvenile offenses. I am also privileged to work with the REP program, and that's how I got to know Mr. Campbell. These are youth who are also have been incarcerated, and I get to teach the 8th grade mathematics class. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to be able to discuss today. Thank you.
Grant.
My name is Grant Harland. I also am a teacher at Building Bridges Middle School, but I teach science. I've been there for 5 years now. So we've seen kids that are in trouble on their way to prison and kids that are out of juvie trying to get their lives back together in the 5 years I've been there. And I came to support Mr. Wright in this awful bill that they're trying to pass through.
Great. So what we're going to do, we are going to first ask, what is this bill? Censorship. It's the classroom censorship bill. And I want you to tell us a little bit about this awful bill. And then as Kathy comes in, I want her to tell us a little bit about what the school to prison pipeline is, because we want our audience also to understand a little bit about those types of things. So we'll let Kathy, we'll let you start off first. You can either start off with the school to prison pipeline, and then, or you can talk about the censorship classroom bill.
Great. So I'll talk a little bit about the school to prison pipeline, and then I'll share how does this connect to the current bill that it's aiming to be passed. But basically, it's really thinking about the school as a place that is not doing what it's meant to be, which is creating opportunities to educate our young people as whole human beings and about their life skills, the history, their identities, the whole people. But rather, is schools have served historically as a mechanism to oppress, especially Black, Brown, POC young people, and really send them into like pathways that are not supported for them to thrive, but rather to fall into systems that were not created for them to succeed. And then just to add, this bill that is aiming to be passed is essentially a bill that is telling us that there is things around race and identity that are divisive concepts, meaning that they are creating disruption and that they shouldn't be talked about, that there are topics that shouldn't be talked about. Yet, it's important to know that 2/3 of young people in the state of Georgia are Black and POC young people. So essentially, this bill is telling us you can't talk about your identities. You can't talk about the history of this country. You can't talk about how our history connects to our lived experiences and our realities. And so, and on top of that, my call to also white folks in the US and in Georgia is really sending the message that white kids are too fragile to have hard conversations. And the reality is that we need to heal. We need to talk about things. We need to feel through things. We need to sit in uncomfortable conversations in order to heal and move forward and change things.
Awesome.
So
Okay.
Kathy,
Hold on, Marie. Marie, she said a word first that I think the people don't. We need clarity, and then Marie, you can go. You say POC.
Okay.
Could you explain POC?
Yes. What I mean is people of color, and I use that term to include Black, Brown, Indigenous, POC people that come from different countries, like the Latinx community. Which, really quick plug, Latinx is not a race; it's an ethnicity. We come in different shades, and those experiences create different lived experiences and realities depending on our race, on our gender, and all of those identities that intersect.
Thank you. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Marie.
Okay, so Kathy, that bill, that censorship bill, HB 888, the one that you were just speaking on about saying about discrimination, that's the one that they want to be passed. And I was telling Miko that I looked up the myth and the facts. So I think that we should vote no on that because those things still need to be talked about, just in my opinion. I think those things need to be talked about, and no, it shouldn't be shunned away or done away with.
I absolutely agree. I think that the message that we're sending is that we are being penalized to exist, pretty much, because if we cannot talk about our identities, if we cannot talk about the hurt and the resilience of our peoples, then you're essentially telling us that we don't matter and that we shouldn't exist and that we shouldn't talk about our identities. So
I
it's
like
essentially an attack to our humanity as a whole.
right.
Mr. Wright, come on and talk to us.
I was actually going to, my friend Mr. Harlan has a wonderful saying on this one. I wanted him to tell the story. You remember?
No, which one?
Oh, well.
I
No,
got a lot of
we actually, Mr. Harlan and I, we actually discussed this issue a lot. He and I met because we teach at the same school. And we also believe everything you say because everything got even more, let's say, crazy, if you want to use the word, with COVID and taking our kids online. And when you say about really, there was something like as a teacher to be able to teach identity because you're in the classroom. I try to, as a male and as a Black male, you have to portray an image and you have to discuss your identity. I can tell you that we have kids who are just lost. And that is why I try to teach. And that's why we have to, these bills are able to silently pass because our kids, our adults, are not worried about our kids. And that is the real reason when I get on my soapbox, if you would say, it's not about the children, it is about the education of us as the adults also. We allow a lot of things to transpire because we don't want to be involved, as she said. Our identity, our culture is already lost because we don't ourselves want to fight for it. We have accepted whatever has been given to us. And we know that culturally, it is almost like we're okay with the captivity because we still have to go to our captors for financial things. For with our captors, we're still our police, which still shows violence towards our kids. I love there's a saying that when we look at people of color with cops, they're always photogenic and they're photos of opportunity. And the minute that they leave the school, they become photos of warrants and people who might be someone, the same kid now with the hoodie is a dangerous person. He might be carrying a gun. He might be in a gang. And once again, that's our parents who allow, because that is still them talking about our kids. And so I'm just trying to come as a teacher to ask that we be more involved as a family unit for our children. That's why the Senate bill is able to be discussed, because we as parents are not involved with our children and letting things go. So that's why I just really see that there's a lot of things that can be, if we get involved with the community as we should and take responsibility, as I try to do as a teacher. And I just agree with everything she says, but I just really feel that as an adult, we just shy off the responsibility that we have. A lot of us are the generation that were the first ones to go to school after our parents. And we slack in the responsibility of knowing that we were to educate the next generation, you know? So I just feel a different vibe when I think about our responsibilities.
You know
And
what, Mr. Wright? I love what you say. You say our responsibility. A lot of the parents are not educated on things. A lot of the parents are not educated. When I was talking to my coworker today, she was like, "Marie, that's good information." She said, "Because I did not know." And I think that we have to take the time to want to know. Well, and even when I talked to one of the social worker at the school, she didn't know nothing about this bill either. She knew nothing. So it's good to get educated. But just like you said, Mr. Wright, we have to be more involved in our children's lives.
True.
I like that. Yeah.
What about you, Grant? Talk to us. You said when we started out that this
Mhm.
was a dangerous bill. Tell us a little bit about your views as it relates to this
Well,
bill.
I think it's very dangerous because if you're not looking at me on TV, I am a Caucasian. Uh, I'm from Miami. Thank God I grew up in Miami because we had every race and creed there, and we got to learn about different cultures and where people grew up and food and everything that made everyone beautiful and unique. But then I moved somewhere else where it was mainly all looked one way, and it was very different, and everyone was ignorant because they don't get to ask questions to people. And if we pass a bill like this, You're going to make more people ignorant. You're going to block more people off away from each other. We need more talk with humble hearts, though. No hatred, but we need to understand each other, and we can't ask questions with this bill passes. That's just going to keep us where we're at and maybe go backwards.
Well, Grant, you need to be on that board. You
I'm
need to
telling
be on that board where we can ask questions. You be the person, the go-to person where we can ask questions, because a lot of people don't have humble hearts. You
Right.
understand? It's a lot of people don't. I'm not saying everybody's bad, but a lot of people don't have humble hearts, and that's a key message. Which a key. I love what you just said. A humble heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I got a question for Kathy. And first of all, I want you to know that Lee Price is watching, and RG says that this is an amazing topic. David Carter is watching, and Havel Wright as well, and D'Angelo. Thank you for watching. If you have a question, just send it into. I can read you right there. Just let us know what that question is, and I will make sure that each of our panel and co-hosts will be
Lee
able to
Price
answer
said
that.
amen, Miko. Lee
Yes,
Price
ma'am.
said amen. He said
I see.
amen.
Amen to you, brother. Kathy, as a director of Deep Center, and Deep Center is basically, tell us a little bit about what Deep Center is. Just briefly, I know that Deep provides a voice for the voiceless, and it gives youth an opportunity to share, because it creates language and art and music. But nevertheless, as a director of Deep Center, tell us why you think that this bill is stopping the opportunity for young people to learn and to speak. It's making them voiceless.
Yeah, so you cover a lot of what Deep Center does. We use, again, arts and culture to really think about restorative justice work, to do restorative justice work, and to really advocate for changes in policy and reforming the systems that are currently in place, because they're not working. Well, they are working in ways that, you know, provide support and dominates the culture, but not everybody. And I think that why this bill is dangerous and prevents our young people from being their best selves is because if you don't know where you come from, and if you don't celebrate your identities and center your joy in who you are, and that pride and that healing, we're always gonna be lost and confused and in hurt and in pain. And so I think that identity work is at the core of liberation. Identity work is at the core of changing the narrative. Identity work is at the core of how we see ourselves and where we see ourselves, and the kind of work that we can aspire to do, and the kind of change that we want to be in the world. And so if we don't have those opportunities where we ask those questions about ourselves, about where we come from, about those who don't look like us, there is no opportunity for solidarity and for moving forward. And there is no opportunity for a wholesome life where everybody can thrive and succeed. And so I think that by passing regulations like this that don't incite critical thinking, we are doing a disservice to our young people, and we are doing a disservice for the changes that we want to see in our community.
Marie, I need you to read. You had some myths about this bill, or about critical race theory, and I want you to read a few of those myths, and then take and read a few of those truths. But before you do that, I was talking to someone today, and I made a statement, and I asked him, was this statement clear? So the statement that I made was, if you accurately speak about critical race theory, then you will share the contributions of Caucasians or our white counterpart, because slavery, Civil War, all of that time period, you cannot talk about the Underground Railroad without talking about those whites that were a part of that. You cannot talk about the Civil Rights era without talking about those whites that were arm in arm with Latino, with Black, with all. So if a person really understands what this is about, then it will eradicate or remove the fear. Would you agree, Kathy?
Absolutely. I think that we all have different identities. And if we don't know ourselves, and if we don't know, if we don't have spaces where we can learn from one another and have spaces to center all different identities, then there isn't the opportunity for that celebration, for that change. And I think that ultimately, if we really don't have spaces where we can talk about identity comfortable, how can we even think that we can come up with solutions and have conversations that move change it and move systems and policies if we can't even feel comfortable about having a conversation around our own identities in a small space? And
So,
I think that to the point that was made earlier is what kind of ancestors are we becoming, you know? And so if we cannot model those conversations for the young people that, you know, we are raising as part of their village, then what kind of ancestors are we becoming? What are the history? What are the behaviors that we are continue to replicate?
I
Marie?
Hey, Julius, if I could jump in, I'm sorry, y'all. When you start talking about race and identity, that is what I love these discussions, and I think everybody has hit the nail on the head. The thing I want to go back, Kathy mentioned it earlier, and that is, and by the way, I'm Robert Bryant, one of the, I don't know what my role is, but I work with ATR on a volunteer basis because we got to support our people. Our people of color, as Kathy was saying, I would say we got to support one another. If we don't support each other, then who will? But going back to what Kathy says, let me show you what happens when identity gets lost. Y'all remember, as we remember, this country was built by, like Mark said, founded by indigenous natives, built by black folks, stolen by white folks. It is what it is, right? And so, what have we done over the years now that the indigenous natives have been kind of displaced? We've forgotten. It's been washed away. And so, what Brian Kemp and his friends want to do is erase Black history, to erase people of color, to erase your traditions and your cultures. And I think that's the danger that we're facing. The sad thing about it is you're putting K-12 teachers like Mr. Wright, Mr. Holland, and Miss Kathy into places that will force them to find creative ways to do that, because the God I know knows that we're going to find a way to get this done. But why are you trying to erase the hate and the nastiness that you did to these people? I just find it very, very deplorable and sad. And then to politicize it makes them even weaker people. Um, and it's sad. And so everything that's been said is good, but I just want to jump in because I find it sad that we even do this to communities like LGBTQ plus IA plus communities. We want people to just forget about who they are, and why should they? You know, and if you start doing stuff like that, you start having issues like what we see with Black trans women, where there are high rates of suicide and murders. And so I guess we just kill ourselves off and we die away, and we just forget about that these folks ever existed.
I wanted to bring something up. I had a student a couple of years ago who looked very white, but he had African bone structure and he felt black on the inside. He had a black father and a white mother. How am I supposed to talk to that child about what he's dealing with inside if we can't talk about his family? That, I mean, it's just hard for you. Mr. Wright didn't even know about it until the next school year. Like, I don't know how are we supposed to help that child's trauma?
Well, my son is mixed. My son, dad is his dad was white and his mom is black. So if you see my son, he's very light. You know what I'm talking about, right, Miko? You see my oldest child, he's very light. So, but he don't. I tell him he still have to consider his Caucasian family because he's half of that. You understand? Well, my son said, "No, I'm a black man, mom," but you still have Caucasian aunts and uncles and things like that. So, you know, I don't know how they want to just take and dismiss it. They say that we should forget. We should forget about the past. But can I say something? The past has not erased itself because it still exists. When you can take and I can be driving in a Mercedes Benz and I can be the DA. This is what happened in Texas. You can be the DA driving in a Mercedes Benz, and if a white cop stops you and don't know who you are, and it doesn't matter. It does not matter. So I think that we should talk about these things humbly, like Mr. Grant said, humbly. I wish that we could get on the level, Mr. Grant, where we can talk about and speak about these things humbly. But you have to get the legislative people that's in legislative, the higher people, the hierarchy people, you have to get them to be humble. They passed, you know what, Mr. Grant, they passed every bill. They passed the bill for the Asians, they passed the bill for everyone, but you know they won't pass the bill to protect African Americans.
Mr. Wright, what was one of the first things I told you when I moved here?
What's that? Please remind me, because I had
Why?
another thought.
I was like, why do all the representatives don't represent Savannah?
Correct.
Right.
And
Correct.
and what we talk about, why not us? Remember?
What about us?
Why
A
don't you tell
united
them about
Savannah.
that? Yeah.
That is correct. When Mr. Harlan and I, as I said, we have very deep conversations about, because when I was in grad school, we had a situation where we discussed role versus identity. And I still think that really that is what we're talking about. I think that we're coming to a situation where people can play a role very well. You do not have to think when you're playing a role. It's a script. That's why actors and celebrities and rappers are playing a very big positive part of our culture because they can play a role. And it's the role that is detrimental to discovering, as I'm so sorry, Miss Kathy has been explaining, because you have to stop listening to Lil Wayne for just a moment and listen to your elder to discuss where you're coming from. But as we see in our culture, our kids are out in the street. We're not listening to anybody who is ready to teach us about who we are. And so we play a role. That's why I'm looking at, once again, for me, an adult give their 2-year-old a phone and allow them to sit for hours in front of a phone. And that kid can become whoever they want to be. They can be a role. They can discover things that are not even supposed to be discovered by them at that age. And intriguingly, if you look at some of our Instagram videos and some of our World Star videos, we have the little kids who are all on TV cursing and calling women bitches and their own mothers. But it's not just women. It's the kids, and we're laughing at it. We're giving them passes to no longer respect your mother. That's a part of your identity, is to respect a woman as a man. And that you're growing up disrespecting your mother. What are you going to do when it's time to be able to go and see someone that you say you want to spend the rest of your life with? And all your
So
life.
let me ask this question, Mr. Wright. Let me ask you this question, because I still want Marie to read the myth and the facts so that we can make sure our audience is aware of what's
Correct.
going on. Why are so many people angry? I was looking at an article on this specific bill out of Atlanta, where there was it was like a town hall gathering, and there were some heated words that were exchanged. Why do you think that people are reacting to this the way that they are reacting? Marie, do you have the myth in front of you?
I have the myth in front of me. I want to read something really quick. You want me, Mr. Wright, to answer, and then you want me to
No,
read?
please. We want to continue.
No, I want
Yes,
you to
please.
read the report.
Okay, Mr. Wright, it says that this is what it says. It says the censorship bill for parents who are out there listening. The censorship bills harm schools' ability to provide every student with an honest, quality education and could slash nearly $1.7 billion of funding from the schools and stop students from necessary resources. So this is the HB 888 bill. Stopping
Yeah.
state sanctioned racial discrimination, increasing transparency in classrooms. One myth is the CRT is not taught in Georgia K through 12 schools.
Correct.
Critical race theory. That's what CRT stands for. It says
Mhm.
it begins as an academic theory claiming that America is systematically racist
Yeah.
and must be dismantled, and is now a worldwide view that is being applied to practice versus activist and calls for moral, economic, and political resolution and fundamental transform American society.
Okay.
And then
So,
it, go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Nicole.
So I want to know why people are responding the way that they're responding. Now I know why. There should be some legitimate anger, but it should be on the other side. And I think that there's misplaced anger here. And we need to learn. I don't know if Mr. Wright said it, but we need to learn how to communicate without having such emotions and angers coming out. We need to be able to communicate, as Kathy said, because if we can't sit down and talk without beating each other up and slobbing at the mouth, something is wrong. Then, so why? Tell me why?
Hey,
Why are so many
Nico,
people
may I say
responding
something?
this way?
In this topic, a topic like racism, I'm telling you right now, Mr. Wright and Kathy them can respond, but I'm saying it's not going to be pleasant.
right.
It's not going to be
Don't ever
pleasant
think that.
because you're not going to tell me that Black lives don't matter, that every life should matter. Guess what? Every life is not got a pistol to the head and being shot. Okay. If Mr. Tolan and Mr. Grant, well, I guarantee you that Mr. Grant gonna go home in peace. Mr. Tolan gonna go to jail because
Now,
of this. I'm
I'll
sorry.
no, no, no,
disagree.
no. Mr. Harlan has to know that we sat down, and I hope that everybody understands. I love it, Mr. Campbell. You said we could be family. So
Right.
Mr. Harlan and I sit down, and we sit down and we watch Dave Chappelle, who is a very brilliant comedian on this topic of racism. And as we sit down there, he and I will look at each other and we go, yeah, because he and I are riding in the car. Automatically, I turn around and look at police. He's like, why are you doing that? I'm like, I don't know. I'm telling you, I don't know. It's just something that I've since 1970. It's just something that and it's just so crazy how distinctively different growing up is. That's why when I have topics of systematic racism with anybody, it's especially white people, it's so hard to discuss it with them because they grew up under it. They don't even see it. You can't even see it to discuss when you grew up with it. And you don't understand that your privileges are your childhood. You know, as she said, your curriculum and school curriculums were so different. They made it like you were having to have a topic like this. Like that just shows you how much systematic racism really truly was to empower just simply one race. You know, and it's just so amazing to me that we're asking a question as if slavery did not still hurt people today. Right. There are people who still have watched their kids die because of racial tension like it was 1863. And I'm like, I don't even get how you can have, even my friends and I, when we discuss, we're like, man, do you know that the same lyrics that they had in rap songs are the same lyrics they got now? And nothing has changed. Like, we still get shot. Like, nobody has ever made a law to even stop that. Like, there's nothing that said to anybody except we can make more money off of this.
Well, let's start with CRT, y'all. CRT is not taught in kindergarten through 12th grade. Anybody that tells you that is a pure idiot. I'm very direct, so excuse my language. CRT is a theory. It's a theoretical lens in which it came out of a legal standing, a legal context. And I'm not a CRT researcher. I do have friends who do use that as a lens to do research, but it's a research theory. What is a theory? It is a way to look at and frame social phenomena, things that are going on. It's an overlay. And I go back to what Mr. Wright said. Let me share a very personal story of how racism impacts and has impacted communities. And Mr. Wright doesn't even know this story, but he knows my dad. My dad is in his 90s, right? And so my dad grew up in Savannah when there was a Missouri Avenue. Many of you all don't remember Missouri Avenue. But Dad, when he was 8 years old, my father's father, my grandfather, was fired. His job was taken from him and literally given to a white man. This is during segregation. At 8 years old, my dad was 8 years old when his father died from heartbreak from that. That's how powerful racism was, and it lives on today. People want to wonder why a lot of quote unquote black fathers are not in the home. It's because during slavery they were taken out of the home. They were taken from the family. And then their wives were used by the white man as concubine and to create other children. That's why a lot of these things still exist today systematically. And so you see our teacher break these things down to understand better why did it happen and how do we improve it. But see, we have people in power who don't want to fix these systems and these issues, right? And so it's up to us to put the right people in office so that we stop having these ignorant conversations. And really, what Republicans want to do is use CRT as a fear factor. It has nothing to do with what's going on. Nothing. It is a distraction. It is a fear factor. And it's a way to tear down even more black communities so they can re-gentrify and give it to those like the Chamber of Commerce. And if we don't
But
stop
wait a minute, Robert. Hold up 1 second.
Okay.
Let me
Okay.
interject because I want us to remember. I'm systematic, so I don't want us to spew out a lot of emotion. I love that you have broke down the critical race theory. I love that, but I want to make sure that the questions are answered because I want Kathy to speak to this too. But let me help you understand. I see you, Damian, welcome watching, and also Terrell Parks. Thank you. But this is what I want y'all to answer this question. The question was, why is there so much anger in this communication? Now, that's the question. Now, Wright answered it. He said, because it still hurts, because it's still fresh, because we still feel this, and many people are trying to sweep it under the rug. I want answers because remember, our audience doesn't know some of these answers. So I want them to be able to understand as well. So Kathy, you tell me, why is there so much anger? And is that anger on the right side?
Well, I think this bill is very reactionary and is reactionary in the wrong side of history, because what it's telling us is that really we want to keep a status quo. We want to keep a dominant narrative in place. We don't want nobody to like just let's think about things like Indigenous Peoples Day, or more known like Columbus Day. You know, why is there so much outrage with this? It's because we don't want to think critically about the things that are uncomfortable. And the reality is, like, Columbus was a murderer, and we keep calling that holiday like that in many places. And then that was the person that murdered my ancestors, raped my ancestors, that was instrumental to slavery. And so why would we want to celebrate that? But yet Columbus is historically being used as a staple of the Italian community in the United States. And so we don't want to have those conversations because it means that we have to look at ourselves, and we need to think critically about the stories that we've been fed, and we need to think critically about what is our place in the world given our history and given where we come from and our different identities. And so for those who historically have been in power, having conversations that really look at thinking critically of those things that haven't been questioned before makes them uncomfortable. And so bills like this is a reactionary way to say, like, no, I don't want to have that conversation. So let's put it in whatever other way. Let's sugarcoat it. Let's use this language that may seem like it's going to create some sort of conflict, so we can stop the conversations that make me uncomfortable, to stop the conversations that are calling me to like think critically about what is my contribution to our society, what are the things that I need to give up and step back from certain power that I've had historically in order to change things.
So when saying that, Marie, you start this, Marie, and we're gonna go around the circle. Do you believe that we, when I say we, not just the ones that's on this TV,
you're talking about us as a whole
community, not just black, but white, Latino, do you believe that we can sit down and discuss this without, I like the responsibly. Do you believe that we can sit down and discuss history, racial issues, systematic racism? Do you believe that we can sit down and discuss that reasonably and responsibly? Yes or no?
No,
Why?
I don't think that we can, because like you can say, uh, leave your emotions out of it, but emotions are going to come in because if we sitting down, say we sitting down with legislators, and I'm sitting here giving you all the reasons why you should not pass this bill, and then you telling me your logic of it, it's gonna make some people upset.
Okay. All right. What
So
about
I
you,
don't
Grant?
know.
Um, I believe that this kind of conversation can only be had with people you trust.
Hmm.
So, like Mr. Wright and I, as a Caucasian in Savannah, there's not a lot of people I can really like identify with here, which is I like actually. But but you need to find someone you can trust and have this open conversation with. So really, it needs to be like neighborhood, like friends, and then they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and that's really the way that this kind of grassroots thing works. And I believe it's so emotional because it's an open wound. Because Lincoln was assassinated with all the plans that had to fix this, and then 100 years later, we try to fix it with Malcolm X and MLK, and look what happened to them. And the wound is still open.
Wow.
But you know
I
what? Can I
like
say something, Grant, about that Lincoln statement you made? Lincoln really did not want to free the slaves.
Well, I know. Yeah,
Okay,
that.
I
so
know.
you
Okay,
know
but you're gonna go off on a
I'm not
tangent.
making him a
Let,
martyr. I'm just
let me
saying.
bring you back.
go
Let me
ahead,
bring you
go
back.
ahead.
Let me bring you back. Barbara often is watching, and she said, "Very well spoken, Marie." But Mr.
Can I
Wright,
can I
do you
say
believe?
something? Can I just quickly say something? So I
Yes,
think
yes.
the other big piece is like I don't think that this conversation has to be only happen with trusted people, because then we're not going to change systems. Like we all
Exactly.
have a stake in these conversations. We all have a role to play. And I think that oftentimes when I have these conversations with with white and POC and black and brown and indigenous educators, sometimes I think that especially for white folks, there is this almost like blockage where we equate white skin with whiteness. And I think there is a huge difference between that. You, by being a white person, you're not inherently bad. And you're not inherently not shouldn't be having this conversation. If anything, you should be having more conversations about this. You should be questioning yourself, and you should move on beyond your guilt and whatever else you're feeling. And you need to process that with, yes, in perhaps a group of other white folks. But the reality is that we need to start thinking about these conversations deeper than just a dichotomy, but rather thinking about what is whiteness and what is that whiteness as a mechanism that is preventing us from having these conversations, preventing us from discussing privilege, preventing us for really thinking critically about what we can do also with that privilege to change the narrative, to be accomplices in anti-racist work.
Rob, I want you to answer the question as well. But before you do, Barbara says, it depends on who you're talking with. When people that look like me don't even understand white privilege, it is hard to have conversations about race. And so you can
Right.
speak to that, Rob, but also, do you think that we can have this conversation?
I believe we do need to have this conversation with everybody. I'm saying that unemotionally to have this conversation, you have to be with someone you trust. But these conversations have to be talked about because we're not going to get more split off. If you've actually seen the cover Time Life, I think what the human's going to look like or an American in 100 years, they're all going to be some kind of mocha complexion. So we're going to end up looking more alike, and we're going to have to talk about this more in the future than less, really.
I think you know what I think. I think you have to get uncomfortable to be comfortable. I think you have to get uncomfortable. Go ahead, let's state that. Let's put everybody to the table, and you just have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable. Because if we don't acknowledge that if it's wrong, it's nothing ever going to be solved. Nothing
I
ever. We're
like
going
that.
to
I do. I do. I like
You
that.
you
That
have
because
to
we
feel
can't.
it to feel it. If we don't feel things, we're never gonna heal and we're never
right,
gonna move on.
right.
But now, and makes Mr. Wright, you speaking here. Listen to this now. In England, and I think if I'm right, y'all tell me I'm wrong. In England, they have parliament. And now I've seen this on TV. When they are in there discussing, they're not they're not talking. If you've ever seen the way that they handle it, everybody is screaming at the same time. How can you get anything accomplished with
Right.
that type of communication? However, if you do have a sitting not devoid of emotions, I agree with you, Marie, not devoid of emotions, but everybody able to share, then I believe that we can bring about some healing. But if you're angry going in, then aggression begets aggression. Mr. Wright?
I just have different, I kind of look at it differently because Mr. Harlan and I have discussed this. Whenever I feel like whenever a black male, I'm a black male as a teacher, and it's a predominantly female oriented profession. The minute that I raise my voice, I might be called angry. I even asked somebody, because as a black male, the energy that I'm everybody who knows Mr. Wright knows that I am no thug, gangster, or anybody, but I have a loud voice. And that loud voice is because I watch my kids get shot in the street as if they were just dogs, like they were nothing, pure and simple. And we watch that on a daily, and our families don't even support each other enough that they will watch the other ones, that they will protect the other ones from that. And so when you say about being angry, sir, I'm telling you, as a black male, we are so angry because one of the statements that I've heard from an older black male was, we've been running for 350 years. Everything that y'all say, a black male has been running from. He has been running from responsibilities of his family life because he's either been a hoe, basically a bull, a genetic bull. That's basically what you're saying, because that was slavery. So we have all these things that are effects of why we're angry. And when it doesn't matter who you are, the minute that you start talking about it, in my opinion, the minute you start talking about this issue, you're deemed angry. I was looking at Obama deliver the State of the Union address, and nobody remembers how the guy in Kentucky stands up and goes, "You're a liar." Was he emotional? Did he not scream out? Was he not angry? And nobody said anything, but they did call Obama angry. They did call him angry. And that's why I keep telling people, it don't matter who you are. This conversation is always going to have a hard time because black men are angry and we can't be talked to. And so that's the real beauty of this bill, because now you won't be able to show the beauty of, like Roots showed me, that we had people who survived slavery and said to them, even though I can't read, I'm going to learn how to read. Even though I can't speak English, I'm going to learn English. Nobody's teaching me, and I'm going to teach the one below me how to do it. How did we survive? And now we're in this, and yet we still say to ourselves, and I shut up on this one, because the Constitution still says that an African-American male is 3/5 of a U.S. citizen. And they didn't even change that, to my knowledge. And that's still in the Constitution. So I am done. You cannot have a conversation with nobody without being angry, because they do not care until they start changing some of the things to make the playing field level. White privilege doesn't make it level. And anybody who disagrees should know that the minute that they freed us in 1868, that last day, they made a law in Georgia in 1869 that said if you were outside after sunset, you would be arrested and go to jail. All those slaves that were freed, where were they going to go? They arrested almost half the mansion right back and threw them right back into slavery. So I am just always amazed by when people say, "Why are you angry? Why are you so upset?" When have you ever been When have you ever been fair to my people?
Exactly.
When?
And I think the Constitution, may I say this before Miko say anything else? And I've been told, Miko, this how I feel. The Constitution needs to be revamped. It needs to be changed because they used to think of us, as like that wood, a chair. A chair had more value than a black person, okay? Black man, black woman, black child. So, yes.
All right. Well, it's 15 more minutes. We got to get ready to cross over that bridge. So this is your opportunity right now. You have, we've been sharing our emotions and sharing how we feel, but now this is your opportunity to tell someone we need to encourage, because there are communities that are oblivious to what we're talking about, that don't understand how they can share or how they can express themselves. So this is the opportunity for you to do that. Speak right now. You start off, Grant. Speak to words of encouragement. How can we encourage our audience to, I guess I want to say, communicate, to dialogue? And what are your parting words as we get ready to shift out?
Well, my parting words, I'm going to jump off the back of Mr. Wright, saying that we do have a lot of bad role models. If we look back about 50 years ago, we had some wonderful African-American role models. And now everyone's looking up to these rappers who really don't have much to say anymore. It's not like Public Enemy who had a message, you know. I think that, and if you stop where I can't talk about race, how am I supposed to give them scientists and inventors who are African-American this month to give them those role models? We need to talk about this stuff because we need to let all African-American children know that they are worthy and they can be what they want to be. And we can't have that conversation with this legislation.
Awesome. What about you, Mr. Wright?
I would love to let everybody know that, as they say, charity begins at the home. And I would ask that you start, as Mr. Harlan said, that you begin to have the conversation with someone that you trust. I am as I told Mr. Campbell, I cannot leave without saying what's in my heart. And I am a big believer in the Bible because I think it's such a true statement, and I'm sorry for saying it. But I just know that when it comes to those of us who love really hard, the cross shows us that it's the ones who are most wounded. And the most wounded is sometimes those with an open arm, like how we're trying to be right now, and still somebody will stab us right in the heart, you know, and that still is a testimony to what we have to do. We still have to have the uncomfortable conversation. As many times as they stab us with our hands wide open and they keep stabbing us, we still have to come to have the conversation. And I would just hope that everybody understands that it is uncomfortable. We are angry. Our kids are upset, but we will have to sit down and see that with Good Friday, there comes Easter Sunday. We just have to go through the cross to get to the resurrection. And that's just how I feel about it.
Preach, preacher. All right. Kathy.
2 big points. I invite everybody to really think about what kind of ancestor are you becoming. That it's a heavy responsibility that we all have, and what kind of ancestor each of us are becoming. And we are in this moment and have the opportunity to like use whatever existence we have on this earth to do better by ourselves, by our ancestors, and by this generation and the generations to come. And the other piece is I invite you all to advocate and to like really call your legislators, use your voice to really advocate for the kind of bills that we want to pass, for the kind of bills that don't want to pass. And I get it. There is a lot of, I can only speak for myself and what I've experienced in my community as a Latina woman. There is a lot of distrust and a lot of just hesitation to engage with government because it's never been on a side that wants us to succeed. But the reality is I invite each of one of us to use our voice to really call your legislators, to tell them that we don't want to pass these bills, that we want to remember that 2/3 of children in our state are Black and POC youth. And we should be asking those parents, we should ask our young people that we want to talk about our identities. We want to see our full humanity. That is the only way that we're going to be able to see ourselves in the spaces of decision making, in the spaces of healing and joy that we want to see. So, what kind of ancestors are we becoming? And use your voice to move those legislations so we can change these systems.
Barbara says, wow, powerful statement, Kathy. Terrell Parks and David McGill are also watching as well. Marie.
Yes, sir. I
You
just think I love this topic, and I think that we need to revisit this topic again. I would love to sit down with our legislatures. I would love to sit down with them to have this conversation and to hear what they have to say to me personally. I think we need to make noise about it, and I would love for our Black and brown women to get more educated on these things. So I'm going to put up that no, we should vote no for all of the bills that they're trying to pass on censorship.
Awesome. I like the way you say that too. As we're closing, thank you, each of you, for coming on and sharing. And I love what you say, because those politicians can only get where they are because the community is voting. And if the community doesn't know any of these things, then that's an ignorant person voting to put somebody in place to pass bills that are not even for us. So again, those of you who are watching, make sure you are educated so that you can contact those legislators. Thank you again, each one of you, Kathy, Grant, Marie, Mr. Wright. I mean, everybody has been awesome tonight. We appreciate you, and we will make sure that we continue to make our voices heard. I am so glad for this platform for us to be able to educate, Marie, encourage, and empower OAA at its best. So,
Very good.
Good night. We will see you again next Friday. Be blessed.
Good night.
Like this.